What? What? Okay, so we're going to go into the ups and downs of the power of the Doctor. Obviously, there is a lot to unpack from this episode, and I haven't fully comprehended everything just yet. So you can be sure that I will miss a few things. If you're new to ups and downs, it's fairly simple. I'm going to go through the episode and give you my ups for the episodes and the downs for the episode. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. I'm Ellie with Who Culture, with the ups and downs of the power of the Doctor. First and foremost, let's start with an up. Let's start with an up. The visuals. This is probably one of the best episodes visually that we've seen in quite some time. Straight away, just from the opening shot, you could tell that they really pushed the boat out with the visuals and the special effects for this episode. That space train was brilliant, all that CGI on the top of the train, the holograms throughout the episode, all the way to the regeneration at the very end. It was visually very, very impressive. However, that also leads me to a down when we talk about that train sequence at the beginning of the episode. I just feel like it wasn't actually that necessary to the entire episode. The child in the box didn't really add anything to the story as such. I feel like you could have taken that whole first section out and it wouldn't have made much of a difference to the story itself. I did like the slight little callback there when the Cybermasters said to the child, "The Doctor lies." I liked the use of that. But really the only purpose of that opening scene was just to give Dan that shock when he gets shot in the in his spacesuit, in the mask, and obviously it gives him that little bit of a wake-up call that this is actually quite a dangerous life, and obviously ultimately gives him the motive to come to that decision to leave the TARDIS. Which is another down, I'm afraid. Dan was such a wasted character throughout his entire run in Doctor Who. I feel a bit sorry for John Bishop because he had so much potential and it was just never utilised. I feel like there's so much more that could have been done with Dan, and he was barely in this episode. He was in Flux, barely. He was in Legends of the Sea Devils, barely. And he was in this episode for probably no more than 10 minutes at the very most. And I think that's it for him. That is it for Dan, and he wasn't ever used as much as he should have been, I think. Having said that, a massive up, of course, has to be the return of Ace and Tegan. What a duo these two are. Absolutely brilliant to see these classic companions back. And it really gave a nice little wink to that return that we saw of Sarah Jane Smith back in Series 2. I really liked the dynamic that the characters had, this kind of idea that once a companion, always a companion. And just because you're back on Earth, you're never going to stop seeing the problems. You're never going to stop seeking the thrills and the adventures. The acting was a little bit rusty, but that made no difference and didn't make it any less wonderful to see Janet Fielding and Sophie Aldred back on our screens. And you know what? It's been a while for them. So you know what? We're going to let it go. We're going to let it go. It was still absolutely just brilliant to see them back on our screens. And of course, another character that it was absolutely brilliant to see back on our screens was the Master. Now, another down, slightly in the same vein as the train sequence. I feel like that whole Rasputin bit at the beginning was again unnecessary. It just, other than the fact that he's kind of just toying around, there's no real purpose to it. And I know that that did lead to obviously the pictures in the galleries having him all over these famous paintings. But I feel like you could have gone straight to just showing her the paintings with the Master in them without you actually seeing him posing as Rasputin. It didn't need to be there. You got the point without it. Having said that, and up here, something I absolutely did love is the twist of the Doctor Master. That whole forced regeneration, I mean, that's something we haven't really seen before, and that was very clever. I really liked the twist of that. The idea of the Doctor then having the face of the Master, having the mind of the Master, and the Master trying to kind of fool the world into thinking that the Doctor is an evil being. I really did like that. And something that I have been saying to the rest of the Who Culture team, and something that I feel very strongly about here, in fact, it's going to be my super up for the episode. I like how we say super up, because we couldn't think of anything better. So if you have an idea of what our super ups could be called that is something much better and more Doctor Who related than super up, then please let us know in the comments. That would be great. But my super up for this entire episode goes to Sacha Dhawan's performance as the Master. He is phenomenal, absolutely brilliant as the Master. He carried that episode solely by his performance. He's witty, he's villainous, he's just everything the Master should be. And it kind of gives a little wink back to kind of the John Sim era. You know, that kind of rah-rah Rasputin dancing, that's so similar to the kind of things that we saw when John Sim was the Master, and I just found his performance incredible, particularly in this episode. And actually that leads quite nicely into another up for this episode, which is just the fan service. The fan service in this episode was just never ending. Absolutely never ending. You had, obviously, as I've just mentioned, you had the kind of the Master dancing around, which is a callback to those John Sim times. You had the whole gang flying the TARDIS like in Journey's End and the Stolen Earth. Within that, another up. You had Doctor number 1, you had Doctor number 5, you had Doctor number 6, 7, and 8. And then on top of that, you then had a beautiful moment between Ace and Sylvester McCoy's Doctor. You had a beautiful moment with Peter Davison and Tegan there, and a mention of Adric. All of this fan service. Brilliant, absolutely remarkable. You had then, of course, the group at the end of all the companions. You had Graham coming back. Absolutely wonderful. You had the Master's costume as he was the Doctor, with references to all different incarnations. You had Tom Baker's scarf in there, all sorts of different elements all drawn in, and all in the name of fan service. However, within some of that fan service there are a few downs as well. First and foremost, you have this group at the end, this group of past companions. And while that was absolutely brilliant, I do feel like you just needed one more face in there that was a reboot companion. You know, you had Ian Chesterton, you had Joe Grant, you had Mel, you had then Graham and Dan and Yaz and Kate Stewart, but I feel like you needed one that was kind of in the middle. You needed someone like Martha Jones. Obviously it had to be someone that was still alive, still on Earth, and able to be there. But I feel like someone like Martha Jones, or actually someone that the Who Culture team have unanimously agreed would be the perfect person to be there, Rory's dad. Rory's dad definitely would be on Google looking for any connections to the Doctor he could find, and I feel like he definitely would love to sit down with Graham and Dan with a cup of tea and reminisce about his few adventures that he had in the TARDIS. I mean, come on. Also, while it was great to see Graham back, bit of a down. Why did he randomly turn up in the middle of a volcano? That made no sense at all. Another down is the use of Kate Stewart. I love Kate Stewart. I think she's a brilliant character. I love that there's now this connection between the classic era and the modern era by having Kate Lethbridge Stewart. She's a strong woman, and I feel like it was a bit out of character for her to be a bit weak and feeble, shaking, hiding, and then kind of screaming for help. Obviously, cyber conversion, I don't think it's very pleasant. But it just felt a bit out of character for Kate. Please don't threaten to kill Kate like that again. I feel like if you're gonna kill Kate, actually do it, or have her nowhere near even the thought of being captured. But it just felt a bit screaming for help, and it didn't feel very Kate to me. Now, in terms of 13 and Yaz, I think maybe a down a little bit here. For 13's final story, she was actually missing from quite a big chunk of the episode. Obviously, having been transformed into the Master, she was there but wasn't there. But seeing as it was Jodie Whittaker's final episode, I feel like there was a lack of Jodie Whittaker. I did think for a while, is that it? Is that her gone? She's the Master now, and is that all it's going to be? But luckily she did come back. I mean, of course, she did regenerate, but it just felt a little bit Jodie Whittaker-less considering it was her final episode. Now, on the other hand, massive up, Yaz was brilliant in this episode. I really, really saw Yaz in a different light here. This was very much Yaz being more than just a companion. She's flying the TARDIS by herself. She is doing what needs to be done. She is saving the day, to be honest. Without Yaz, everyone would have been pretty screwed. And I think for Mandip Gill, as a performer, as a companion, I think that was actually a really strong episode for her. However, if that is the last we are seeing of Yaz, I do feel like they did do Mandip Gill a little bit dirty with that exit. If that's it for Yaz, I do feel a little bit like that was a bit underwhelming. To the point where I almost feel like if they'd at least killed her off, it would have been a lot more impactful for the actor and for the character. The biggest up for The Power of the Doctor is that final regeneration scene. Visually, it was stunning. Absolutely beautiful. It was so lovely. The sunset stood on that cliff top, absolutely stunning. The words of the Doctor, the emotion of the Doctor, I mean, it was very, very powerful. And of course, David Tennant! Now, when I say I screamed, I wish I was exaggerating, but I screamed. And of course, he had to end on his iconic, what? 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 It has made me so excited for what's to come. One point though, something that we don't see very often, the Doctor regenerated, clothes and all. Does that mean something? Who knows? Maybe that means something. I'm not sure. And of course, then we were teased. We were then treated to a little teaser for what's to come next year. And we did get a glimpse of Ncuti Gatwa, our first glimpse of Ncuti Gatwa as the Doctor. I'm so excited. I can't wait for what's in store for us. Doctor Who, it just makes me so happy. Make sure you head over to Twitter and Instagram to follow Who Culture as well. We will be posting our thoughts, our reactions. We'll be posting all sorts of new things about this episode, about what's to come. It's a very exciting time. Also, our personals as well at eLittleChild on Twitter. Just search Ellie Littlechild, you'll find me. Sean Ferrick as well, find him on Twitter, find him on Instagram. Let us know how you're feeling about this Doctor Who episode. And yeah, that's it. I don't know what else to say.